the stock show does over these 16 days, what it does for Denver, what it does for Colorado, and for agriculture more broadly, is really pretty special, and I'm proud to be associated with that. To the people who were up here this evening on the stage, Doug Jones, as you've heard, Doug was the chair of the board in 2008 that took a chance on me as a president, and otherwise he's led a distinguished career of service to his community. Kelly has provided great leadership through the chamber and puts up with me on her board. Terrence Carroll, after a great career in the legislature and being speaker, got tapped to give tonight's prayer. Terrence has been telling me for the last couple weeks that he'd finish the prayer, and I kept telling him to keep writing because he has no idea how much praying I need. Dick and Eddie Robinson had the unenviable task of selling tickets to an event where I was the honoree, and I think it says something about how much this event matters to all of you and how many markers Dick and Eddie had available to call in that you're all here this evening. To my friend and colleague and sometimes conspirator, Joe Blake, thank you for the wonderful letter in the program as well. It takes so many people to make an event like this work. We've thanked some of them tonight, but all of the subcommittees and whatnot, I'll thank all of you by thanking Carla Holst and the Arrangements Committee for what you do. There's a group of folks that we don't probably think of and thank as often as we ought to, and those are the people who set this room up and will tear it down for tomorrow's events and prepared the food tonight, served it to us, or parked the cars this evening. Let's give all the staff involved in this evening a big round of applause. Now, I think I've probably teased the people who made this selection about their judgment enough, but there's one individual I should highlight because I think it was probably a particularly bitter pill for him to swallow, and that's my colleague, Dr. Marv Beeman. Marv, as you all know, is a veterinarian. He's a superb horseman. He's a member of the Roundup Riders of the Rockies, and of course he was there that year that I had the privilege of going on the big ride and with that great group of men. And Marv would have known exactly how much Tylenol and ibuprofen it took me to get back in the saddle each day, and I can't imagine that it didn't give him pause that this award was going to someone with those sort of horsemanship skills. Speaking of which, I should thank Charles Scoggin, who was the president of the ride that year. Charles loaned me Oscar, a wonderful horse, to get through the ride, and every night after dinner, I would limp back to the picket line where Oscar was tied up, and I would give him a treat and scratch him behind the mandible where the halter itched him. And those of you who are around horses know that if you scratch a horse just right and in the right place, it'll kind of lean into you, and it gives this really satisfied kind of grunt and, as it enjoys that. And as I would itch Oscar that way, and he'd lean into me, and his big old eye was about this far from my eyes, we'd look at each other, and I'd like to think in that moment he knew how grateful I was that he'd kept me in the saddle, and I'm pretty sure I knew how grateful he was to have me off his back. I accept this award, of course, on behalf of Colorado State University, and there's nothing I've done there that isn't the product of the work of an awful lot of people. I'm biased, of course, but I think our faculty, our staff, our students, our alumni, pretty special people. And the leaders that I've had a chance to work with through our Council of Deans, my cabinet, are amazing individuals. My colleague presidents, Tim Motet from CSU Pueblo, Becky Takata-Tinker from CSU Global Campus, Amy Parsons, our executive vice chancellor. These are people who work incredibly hard and get a lot of things done. And I also need to thank a couple of other CSU folks as well. Al Yates, who you've heard from this evening. Al, as you've heard, took a chance on me a long time ago as a 39-year-old vice president, and has always been strong enough never to ask for a do-over on that. And then the late Jim Voss, who you also saw in that video. Jim was a longtime dean of our College of Vet Med and one of my closest friends and mentors. And people like Al and Jim have made CSU the place it is, and it's why it's such a privilege to follow in their footsteps and lead that place. I can't talk about CSU, of course, without talking about the great boards of governors that we've had. My board is here this evening. I've worked with great board chairs, starting with Doug and Pat McConaughey, Joe Zimlick, Dorothy Harrell, Bill Mosier, Rico Munn. Now, you all know most of these people, and I know that you're thinking, these are really, really different people, and they are, but they all share one critical common ingredient. They care a lot about these institutions of higher education and what they can do for the lives of our students. That's a pretty special thing that they offer in service to Colorado. I can't mention Dorothy Harrell, of course, as a former board chair without recognizing that Dorothy, who you saw in the video and is here this evening, is the chancellor now at CU Denver. She's at a CU table there with some of my friends and colleagues, my friend Don Elliman and from Anschutz, and the sort of dean of our higher education leadership in the state of Colorado, Bruce Benson. Lori Nichols from the University of Wyoming is here, another of my colleagues, Rebecca Chop from DU. All of these people, and you can't mention higher ed leadership, of course, without also mentioning Al and Dan Ritchie and his role at DU. All of these folks have created this wonderful situation where we can stand here in front of you today and talk about the quality of a degree from a Colorado college or university, the fact that it's produced with fewer taxpayer dollars than any other state in the country, and Mr. Mayor and Kelly, it's a moderate tuition state in the national marketplace. Just felt I had to say that. All of these folks have worked, same as our board, in service to Colorado. And speaking of that, I want to make sure I pause and thank Lieutenant Governor Donald Lynn on behalf of Governor Hickenlooper and all of our elected officials. Secretary Tom Vilsack and his wife Christy, who are working with us here at the National Western, are here this evening. My good friend, former Governor of Colorado, Bill Ritter, is here. All of you picked incredibly challenging times to be involved in public service. There's a polarization out there that pushes all of you toward conflict. And yet in Colorado, in a way that I think is pretty special, you usually find a way to come together, to find some common ground, some middle ground, and to move us forward on behalf of all of Colorado. And I think you all deserve a great deal of thanks for that. I would say as well that nowhere is that finding middle ground more apparent than it is here at the National Western. Under the leadership of Mayor Michael Hancock, Speaker Chrisana Duran, Senator Jerry Sonnenberg, Representative John Becker, people like that, along with our partners at Denver Museum of Nature and Science, History Colorado, Denver Water, these folks all came together in a very real sense to save the stock show here in Denver and to make a bigger difference as we go forward. I think that's a legacy that all of us are going to be incredibly proud of. Of course, I want to thank my family, my three beautiful daughters. You've all grown into wonderful young women. I'm so proud of how your mother raised you. And I'll say one thing about my wife and my best friend, Dr. Patty Helper. She's an incredibly strong woman who in, let's just say the early 1980s, early-ish, took a chance on a guy who lived in a basement and slept on a mattress with a very large, smelly dog. Now, to be fair, I couldn't smell the dog, but the consensus is the dog did smell. I'm glad you took that chance on me. I wish that my parents were here to thank them as well. My mom, as you heard, taught us the value of education. She was a third grade teacher. My dad was a farmer who thought there was nothing better than working with livestock. I remember really distinctly, we were riding in our pickup truck through a wooded part of our pasture counting calves when I told my dad that I had accepted a residency at Purdue and was going to go on to work on my PhD. And my dad liked to focus on one thing at a time, so he stopped the truck so he could turn and look directly at me and look me in the eye when he asked the question, "You can be honest with me, is it because you can't get a real job?" It was hard for him to imagine anything better than working outside with livestock. And at the end of a day of doing that, he'd come in and sit in his chair and he'd read Zane Grey novels. And I believe that man dreamed dreams of working cattle on horseback under the open sky on the Western Range. They both gave me so much that is just irreplaceable. And that brings me to all of you as I close and the favor that I want to ask. Now, you've heard that I'm a little bit of a Lincoln fan. Now, in my defense, I'm from Illinois, so your choices are either Lincoln or an unindicted co-conspirator. We don't have a very deep bench in terms of political ethics in Illinois. So I'm not the only kid from Illinois who thinks Lincoln was pretty special. But I think what Lincoln did on July 2nd, 1862, when he created this national system of land-grant universities, changed all of higher ed. Land grant, non-land grant, public, private, American, international, because it made a statement with that signature that at the time was quintessentially American, that said, we're not interested in what socioeconomic class you come from. We're interested in two things, what's in your head and what's in your heart. What's your motivation and what's your talent. And that if we in this country invest in you and you go on to earn that degree, you'll improve your life, your family's life, but you'll also improve your community's life and you'll improve our entire society. Lincoln invested in these future generations sight unseen. And that's the favor I have to ask of all of you. Now, you're no strangers to investing in scholarships. That's partly why you're here this evening. I get it's not about the honoree, it's about the scholarships. But you also have a lot of meritorious places where you could make your future investments. And I just want to ask you to please keep those future generations in mind. Because right now out there, there's a kid, might be a Latina from the urban corridor who wants to be a pediatric cardiologist. Could be a lanky, freckle-faced kid from the Eastern Plains who wants to get an ag business degree and go back and be the fourth generation on his family farm. They don't have so much that's different about them. They don't have so much that's different about them than us. They want good jobs. They want a safe place to raise their family. They want to live lives that make a difference. Investing in this future generation is something that we've always done in Colorado. People with names like Betcher, Anschutz, Daniels, Monfort, and all of you, through the National Western and the scholarship funds, have been making these investments. Now, in the not too distant future, our generation's time is going to start to come to a close. And theirs is just starting. And it's my hope that we will give them the same start that our parents and our grandparents gave to us. That start, that investment, that belief in the future potential of upcoming generations was in the blood that ran in Abraham Lincoln's veins. It is in the DNA and the soul of every university, particularly land-grant universities, and it's in each of you here tonight as well. Thank you for what you do with these scholarships. Thank you for this incredible honor. God bless you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, our 2018 Citizen of the West. Congrats. Enjoy it.